It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. This is another episode, actually the last episode for the year of Frontline Friday with my very special guest, Bridget Gleason. Bridget, how are you?
Andy, I am great. Happy end of the year.
Happy end of the year. And actually, you've got some news, I think, that you need to tell us about some new assignment that you have.
Oh, and I'm so excited about my new assignment. I just got back, as you know, from 2.5 weeks in Tel Aviv. I joined a company, a startup out of Tel Aviv called Logs.io, which is in a similar space that I've been in.
Well,
and
tell people so they understand that space.
It's the log management and analytics space, and not logs like
Lincoln Logs or things you burn in a fireplace. Yes,
not like Lincoln Logs, but like the files that basically are data logs that are created just about everything. So similar space and a really great innovative team out of Israel. Lots of great stuff coming out of Tel Aviv. Really entrepreneurial city, actually entrepreneurial country. I feel thrilled to be a part of it, and I'll be opening up their U.S. office. So looking for salespeople and sales engineers, and really just starting to gen that up.
All right. Well, you'll be bombarded with...
Good. Bombard me.
That's right.
Particularly in Boston. Looking for people in Boston.
Oh, so there's going to be more than one office?
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, we'll have a presence in San Francisco, and we'll build out a team also in Boston.
Excellent. Okay. So is there a place that people should contact you with that?
I'm super, super easy to find. Bridget at logs.io or LinkedIn.
Okay.
If you put Bridget Gleason, unfortunately, I pop up all over the place. So I'm easy to find.
Just a measure of your popularity. So logs is logz.io.
logz.io.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay, let's move on to this. So this episode, here we are, last week of the year. And I think that so often is the tendency is when we look toward the end of the year, everybody starts focusing on, okay, what's going to happen next year? What are we doing? But they always seem to overlook sort of reflecting back on the year that just passed and really understanding what happened or what didn't happen and why not. And I think without that reflection, it's really hard to really put together a solid plan for the following year. So how do you do that? I mean, what's your sort of, when you get your own personal process, and then let's talk about how you work with your team when you get into that.
It's a super good question. I think it's a really important practice. I think people think about this, Andy, at the end of the year, beginning of a year, at the end of a quarter. I tend to try to do it on a more regular basis. So just as part of my process. So as part of my process, I like to look at and be reflective at the end of a meeting, at the end of the day, to look back and say what happened. So I would say part of it is to develop a rhythm, a routine, a discipline around reflection, and not waiting for just the big milestones in life, either personally or in business, but to just have a habit of reflection. We can learn so much by sort of being thoughtful and looking at what happened and how can we learn from it. I would say that would be one, is just thinking about it as a practice. And then at the end of the year, I think we're all maybe perhaps a bit more reflective at the end of the year. And do you want to talk about personal or on the sales side?
Well, I think that you can't really separate them too much, right? I mean, at some point there's an integration or a crossover, but yeah, we can start with personal and then work toward sales, but let's see where they overlap as well.
Okay. So when I'm doing reflection, sort of looking backward at the end of a year, there are different facets of my life that I look at. And obviously business is going to be one of them, but I look at sort of with family. Have the past 12 months been a reflection on how important my family is to me? And they said, you can tell somebody's priorities by looking at their calendar. And have I given my family and let's put family and friends in this circle, have I given them the appropriate attention given how important they are in my life? So I look at that aspect. I look at health. I look at exercise. I look at, I journal. Mm-hmm. So I look at how much time is spent thinking versus doing. And then of course it goes to the professional. And at the beginning of the year, I'm very goal oriented and I write out my goals and what do I want to do? And then I always look back and did I achieve them? And if yes, great. Did I overachieve them? If no, why not? And it serves as a good guide for me in terms of the following year and what I want to do or accomplish or change and adjustments. But I wouldn't say that mine's it's not formal. Like I don't have a way that I do it every single year or every single day or week or month or quarter. But I think being reflective is a really important and valuable way to spend time.
Well, and you talked about, you're very goal oriented at the beginning of the year. And I think this is, worth exploring a little bit because, when you get to the end of the year, are you're really even aware of what those beginning of the year goals were? Or have they shifted to a different set of goals and priorities?
Sometimes they shift, but the way that I make sure that they stay top of mind is part of it. Part of this is why I journal. And part of my journaling routine is my goals. What do I want to do? Who do I want to be? How do I want to behave? I mean, I incorporate that and that keeps them top of mind. I think otherwise, super easy to forget. Hey, let me look and see what I put down as goals for the beginning of the year. It's very easy for them to slip. But having sort of this journaling practice keeps goals top of mind for me, for sure.
Yeah, well, I think that you raised a really interesting thing, which is that more than one, of course. But I mean, we'll start with the issue of family, because this is so important. Especially people are starting families. You look at the stage of professional career, people with begin to the workforce, no families, sort of in that process. Very soon, families start forming. It has a big impact on your ability to succeed at what you're trying to do. I mean, maybe it's been through a divorce, let's say, understands how that can be so disruptive to your work life in ways that you're not even aware of. So, this idea of investing in your relationships is, incredibly important on a personal level. It's incredibly important on a professional level.
Yeah. And, life interrupts. And it's this is part of the ebb and flow that I think we just have to accommodate. There's very rarely do people have, in fact, I don't know of any, people have careers that just go sort of uninterrupted in the way that they had hoped and planned. And there will be all kinds of disruptions to our plan and disruptions to our work plan, be it a baby, or like you said, a divorce, or a financial setback, or a health issue. And how we respond and how resilient we are, and developing that resiliency muscle, I think is important. I think the things, here's what's been beneficial for me when life is interrupted. When I was on a plan, let's say a work plan, it's actually forced me to be more efficient and to be more efficient in my work life and to be more effective. And you and I have talked a lot about results and how oftentimes we measure activity and not results.
Mm-hmm.
And when life interrupts in a way that I hadn't planned and it needs to take hours out of my work week, what I found it does is it's helped me be more efficient, and that I know that I still, if I'm in it, this doesn't happen by accident, it's very deliberate, that I am able to use that disruption as a forcing function to help me look at how can I be more effective? How can I be more efficient? How can I do more in less time? And so I think there can be a positive aspect to it also.
Yeah, I mean, I too often when we sort of go through this process of reflecting, again, there's a tendency I think that we have to start with our failures, and I think that's really important to start with your successes. You know, when you look back on the year, and you talked about resilience. You know, we always encounter difficulties. I mean, for a variety of reasons. You know, this past year has been a difficult one for me. Is on certain personal levels you have to go back and remind yourself of the successes that you achieved, despite the difficulties, because that's really essential. And
I
to remind yourself,
I completely agree.
Yeah, and we've talked about this in other contexts. Is celebrate the good times. And the other thing I think is really important too, and then let you jump in is when you think back is what were the unexpected achievements? And why did they happen? And that's the other thing I think gets overlooked a lot is there's lots of things that occur that maybe weren't part of your plan, yet you still accomplished, and they were fairly significant in one dimension or another. What was the genesis of that? And why did it happen for you? And there's a lot of lessons to learn because, sometimes it's just about being, acting on experience and intuition and going with your gut and going with it and not overthinking things that helps you achieve. And that'd be a great lesson to learn sort of going forward.
Yeah. And sometimes we just got lucky.
Which is okay.
Which is wonderful. I mean, I think celebrating the serendipity of life also can be helpful when things aren't going our way, to remember, like you said, to think about, God, the surprises we got in life that are positive. And some of them we helped bring about, and others was just a little gift that we got. And they're both to be celebrated. But I'm such a believer in also just, like you said, celebrating the successes. In my family, my mom, who is I think she's 87. God, her cup is always, it's more than half full. And it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter what's going on. It's pouring rain, and she'll say, "Oh my goodness, this is wonderful. We've just so needed this rain." It's dry as can be. Oh my gosh, isn't it wonderful that we live in a place where we can go outside and we don't have to worry about bringing a raincoat. And I sometimes marvel at her ability to celebrate just whatever's happening. She's able to see it as something, like my sisters and I always say that the sun always shines brighter on my mother. At least in her own mind, it does. Like she feels she's been given, the best life ever. And there's a gift to that, and being able to look back and be reflective. And God, if we're not sometimes, Andy, conscious and really think about it, we just brush those things under the rug. Yeah, well, whatever. And I think we miss something when we do that.
Yeah, or we spend too much time thinking about what occurred before and ruminating on it. And, you know, part of the reason I think your mom is able to do what she does is she, forgets about, not that forgets, but she puts the negative in its proper perspective.
So true. She has a great ability to put it in perspective, because she doesn't forget about it, but she's able to put a spin on it in her mind and to be really positive. And I'm not suggesting that we should all put a positive spin on everything, because it's also important to take a hard look at where we didn't achieve what we wanted to, or where we didn't live up to maybe a standard that we've held for ourselves, or whatever it is. That there's also something very, very valuable about taking an honest look at ourselves. And that's hard. I don't think any of us like to look and at the places where we failed, or where we've let ourselves or other people down, whether it's personal or professional. It takes a lot of maturity and courage to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that sort of brings to mind one of my favorite quotes that I found early in my career. I just talked about this in an episode not too long ago. Found in Forbes magazine, gosh, long time ago. Had cut it out and stuck it on a magnet on the front of the refrigerator, which was from this whole idea about maturity and being able to appropriately reflect, from Paul Tillich, who is a American theologian, philosopher. His quote is, "The awareness of the ambiguity of one's highest achievements, as well as one's deepest failures, is a definite symptom of maturity." And, to me, that really struck me, is that, everything's very transient, right? Your successes are transient, your failures are transient. And being able to appreciate that is what gives you the maturity to reflect on, I think, accurately reflect on what's happened in your past year in your life, and make good decisions about, okay, what do I want to change going forward?
Yeah, I like that. I read recently, I may have mentioned it last time, a book by Ryan Holiday, Ego is the Enemy. And just a really thoughtful book about keeping our own egos in check, and in some ways also not taking ourselves so seriously. That's not the gist of the book. It really is just keeping our egos in check. But there's a lot of what we're talking about today that makes me think about things he talked about in the book. We're never as great as we think we are, and we're never as bad as people might say we are. So just to have that sort of equilibrium, and not get carried away when our ego gets inflated and we think, oh my God, look at all I've done and all I've accomplished, and I'm so important. And on the other side of it is, when things aren't going our way, to not go so far down and take it so seriously and personally that it can be debilitating.
Well, and I think that this becomes even more important, and this is a little off track, but it becomes really even more important sort of in today's day and age, where it's so easy for people to make you feel bad or about yourself, or it's so easy for people to build you up in a way that undeservedly so. And the tools exist and to do that. And so I think this whole idea of reflection becomes even more important as you talk about doing it frequently, because you are your only real true measure of that.
The other thing he said in the book is, he was talking about successful people, and he said, we might look on the outside and think, oh my God, that person is so successful. Look at all they've accomplished. But we actually don't know what their internal measure of success is.
Or happiness.
Or happiness, and how they're measuring it. And I think that is really interesting Also, again, we're getting a little bit philosophical and off topic, but I think that's okay at the end of the year, talking about reflective.
Sure.
One of the things that I had said to my executive coach that you and I have talked about this before, but I'm a huge believer in having an executive coach. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like a professional therapist, a therapist for my work life. And I've found them really, really valuable. And when I was sort of evaluating what I was going to do next, as I was looking at opportunities before I took this role with blogs.io, I had told her that my intention and my goal was that I was going to enjoy this experience. And whatever this role brought me, whichever role that I chose, mm-hmm. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy the rewards of it. I'm going to enjoy the challenge. I'm going to enjoy it. Life's too short. And so I'm going to be intentional about how I think about and how I internalize this role. And you and I also, Andy, have had lots of talks about the stress of the VP of sales role. Mm-hmm. I mean, sales in general, but people listening, that they think about, moving kind of up from an SDR to an AE to a senior AE, and then I'm a field rep, and then I'm a manager, and wow, one day maybe I'll be VP of sales. And not that everybody wants to do that, but it's a stressful role. There's no question. It's a really, really stressful role. And just wanting to be in the role, but also to have a different experience with it. And so that was one of the things that she and I worked on. And
well, I think a good lesson there is that this whole topic of worry. And there was a study that's published, and I know I've referred to it before, I think it was just about a year ago, where they surveyed people, I think age 60 and up, and what was their biggest regret in life, or one thing do they wish they could have changed looking back? And the answer was really surprising. The number one answer by far was that everybody wished that they had worried less. It wasn't make more money, get more education, it was they wished they had spent less time worrying.
God. And I should have that tattooed on my head, like on my forehead.
On your forehead. Worry less.
So I look in the mirror, worry less. Or like if I were one that was, familiar with the ink, which I don't. I'm not a tattoo person. But put it on my arms, worry less. Because I think that's so significant.
We'll do it with henna so it comes off. But
okay.
But the lesson is, and I think, we think about this and reflecting back on the year, as you think about the big deals you're working on, the big opportunities, or the crucial moments, perhaps at a negotiation or a particular sales pitch, maybe a conversation with, a manager about your future or whatever, what did the worry get you? I mean, you're going to, if you're a professional, you're preparing for this. I mean, there's always going to be you get a little performance nerve. That's fine. But in most cases, it extends far beyond that. And what did it get you? What the time nothing. You spent? Nothing. So if you're turning your lens forward and say, okay, as we look sort of what's coming up, and we say, gosh, what are from a behavioral standpoint or a habit standpoint, what could I work on? Well, and, as you do your reflections, you look back and you start making that list up, this whole idea of worry, to the degree you can be a little, more mindful, be more in the moment, be more present, you'll be more effective in those situations than if you're distracted by your nerves.
Yeah, and I think it's, as with a lot of things, it's so much easier said than done.
Oh, I know, but it's a practice, right? I mean,
But it's a practice. Everything is a practice.
Everything's a practice. I mean, I think about my own experience with becoming a public speaker over the last 4 or 5 years. I remember my first event, that I spoke at in this sort of iteration of my career. I was like, there was a moment I was like, okay, can I step on stage, right? There's so much worry going on. And now, through practice and repetition and so on, it's hardly ever an issue, right? I might have, let's say, performance nerves, but I'm not worried about, is it going to go well, or people going to receive me well, or so on. And it's practice. You got to work on it. And so I'm really enthusiastic about, we're seeing this increased usage and incorporation of mindfulness practice in work. Mm-hmm. You're seeing much more about it. There's I think a conference just happened in Washington, D.C., where there's a huge attendance of all about mindfulness within the workplace. And big companies have managers and directors of mindfulness and so on. So it's the idea about being present, being in the moment, meditative techniques to help us reduce the stress in our life. Really important.
It's interesting. I advise a company up in San Francisco, a little startup called Tint, and I was up there yesterday. It's actually, Andy, in an office space that you and I gave a talk at a couple of years ago up in the Mission. They're in that office space now. Anyway, the CEO, as I was leaving, he said, "Oh, I have something for you," and he gave me this book called Devotion, and it's about mindfulness and mindfulness in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's so interesting that's a big part of what he wants to bring to the table as a CEO and to his company. And I just think it's becoming more and more, I don't want to say it's mainstream, but people are seeing that it can be very valuable in the workforce, that we can, again, have a different relationship with our work than it being something that is just a cause of stress and worry and a paycheck.
And so what was the name of that book again?
It's called Devotion by Kim Nicol, Nicol. And it's great. It's one of these that he said, I guess she came and was speaking at an event that he had attended recently. And this book, it's just a bunch of short, sometimes they're just a line. And he said, you can just open it up at any point and just open it up and read and see what it says to you right there. Like the one that I read, which I think is interesting. In fact, I read it this morning and I sent it to a colleague of mine. This one says, you are remarkable, powerful, beautiful, caring, strong. You judge yourself so harshly, but that's because you have such high expectations for what you should be. The person you want to be isn't half as amazing as the person you already are.
I like it. Yeah, I mean,
just again, a different orientation with work and what that needs to be like.
Yeah, well, I agree. And so for people who want to follow up on this, there's that book, Devotions. There's a couple of books I'd recommend. One that was recommended by your former boss at Yesware, Matthew Bellows, called Turning the Mind into an Ally.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a long name. The last name is Rinpoche, Rinpoche, for you who want to look it up online. And then another great book, also, simple beginner's book, written by a gentleman who's really sort of pioneered a lot of the mindfulness work in the United States, a guy named John Kabat-Zinn. That's Kabat-Zinn, Zinn, called Mindfulness for Beginners. And yeah, excellent reads for people. Just to sort of understand concept of mindfulness and how you might begin to incorporate it into your life. And if it helps with that worry function, and I think if people could document how much time they spend worrying, because inherently I think the time they spend worrying is time they're not spending working, a lot of productive time that you can free up.
Yeah, that's so true.
All right. Well, so hopefully help people a little bit with reflections. Think about the past year, celebrate your successes, especially your unexpected successes. Think about the things you want to do a little bit better going forward with some behavior changes. Worry less. I think in sales, that's a huge thing, is understand this whole idea of where worry comes from. As you talk about doing your daily reflections or more frequent reflections after events can really help minimize some of that, because you're dealing with it right at the time. You're not letting it sort of fester and something that you end up ruminating about forever. And then, take that first step and to start reading about, my recommendation, start reading about mindfulness or anything else you think that will help give you a center, give you a little bit of peace, help make you more productive and enjoy what you're doing better.
Couldn't agree more.
Oh, perfect. I like it when you say that.
I don't say it often, so I enjoy it.
Enjoy the success.
Enjoy the success.
Yeah, that's right. Just wait till next year. All right. Well, Bridget, it's been a marvelous year. It's hard to believe it's been a full year. We actually, together, it's been a little bit, about a year and a quarter. Wow. But it's been nothing but fantastic. And always great to talk to you every week, and I know the audience is enjoying it too. So I look forward to another year of this, and we're soon going to talk about your new adventure in an upcoming episode, so people get the details about what it's like back in the front lines to build a sales team from scratch. So Happy New Year, my friend, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon. And everybody who's listened to this, Happy New Year as well. Hope it's been a successful year. Hope you have a joyous holiday season, and we'll look forward to talking with you all next year.
Have a great one.
Bye now.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.